Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Quisha King Show, where we discuss faith, culture, and politics, all geared towards the next generation. This week, I have a very special guest for you. I think you're going to really enjoy what she has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Carrie Sheffield. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, thanks for having me, Quisha. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Doing great.
Good to hear. So, why don't you tell our audience all about you, what you do, and some of the others? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I am a senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, and we like to say that all issues are women's issues. There are some women's groups that only want to pigeonhole women into little narrow boxes. We focus on pretty much everything. We don't do the abortion issue. We leave that to other groups, just because there are so many other groups who are, tackling that in depth. But we do everything else. We do foreign policy, domestic policy. We are pushing forward right now what we call the Women's Bill of Rights. We've introduced it on Capitol Hill. We have 2 senators and I believe 28 House members. And then we're working with governors at the state level. And it would basically codify what is the definition of a woman. And it spells out, because of ergo the definition, what do those rights entail? And then we also have an initiative called the Independent Women's Network, which is in-person chapters. We have a Florida chapter. We have chapters in Missouri and in Canada, and just coming to a state near you. And if you're interested, you can go to iwnetwork.com and create your own chapter. And with that, it's in-person meetups if you want to meet up with other liberty-minded women who love freedom. And a big issue in the chapters is this issue of parents' rights. And pushing back against mandatory masking in schools, against school closures, against indoctrination with CRT. So all the things that I think your audience cares about, we would love to connect with them.
That is amazing. Tell me more about this women's rights bill. I love that. It's a shame that we have to even have something like that. But
yeah.
I mean, if a Supreme Court justice cannot determine the definition of what a woman is, then I think you guys are right on track and helping to set that record straight.
Yeah. Well, anybody, including you, Quisha, and all of your viewers, can sign on to it yourself. You can add your name to the Women's Bill of Rights. I've added my name, and you can just go to womensbillofrights.com, and you can check out exactly. It spells out the definition of a woman, and again, all the rights that flow from that, from biological protections in our locker rooms, biological protections in our shelters and prisons. I mean, there's so many, this goes beyond just sports, which is obviously a huge passion point for a lot of people, protecting women's sports. But it goes far beyond that. And it really goes to, and I've said this before, this is critical gender theory. And it's part of a much bigger umbrella. It's just one little strand of critical theory. The critical theories up top, and you got critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical class theory. It's all just meant to divide people. Right. And if you research the roots of critical theory, it was created by Marxists in Germany. And they were, trying to reimagine the world. And they thought that they could create, in this postmodern sensibility, that they could create the world in their own image, and that it would be something that would be this utopia. And by doing that, they wanted to dismantle the systems, as they say, dismantle systems of oppression. Well, guess what? In doing so, they have built systems of even more oppression.
You're absolutely right.
And socialism and Marxism, everywhere it's been tried, it has resulted in destruction and death. And capitalism isn't perfect, but when you look at it's not, again, the fact that we're even having to have this conversation, it's just like, okay.
It's mind-blowing.
It really is, because it's like 100 million people died in the 20th century from Marxism and communism. 100 million people. And that number it kind of eyes glaze over a little bit because it's such a big number. But if you think about it, like, that's so many precious lives that are destroyed by this ideology. And so we shouldn't pretend that it's something that is warm and fuzzy, or it's something that we should even toy with.
Right.
It is the most destructive force ever known in human history. And we're playing with fire when we think that, oh, well, we'll just put it with softer characteristics and it'll be
Right.
fine.
It'll be just fine. I'm so happy to hear you know so much about it, because when critical race theory first came in, well, I'll say it like this: when I first learned about critical race theory, it was in 2019. This is way before that I knew it was in the schools, and I was learning about it through ministers like Vodi Bakum, and Neil Shinby, who were, they were talking about it. They were talking about it because it was coming into the Southern Baptist Conference, and they
Mhm.
had the Southern Baptist. Do you know about this? Have you heard?
A little bit, yeah, no, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's been all they've been having all these debates about it.
yeah. And so I was just like, oh, well, that's terrible. Like, why would they bring something like this into the church? Like, I had no clue that this was going on in schools. And so when my oldest daughter, when she had her, when our family had our run-in with critical race theory in our face, I am so thankful that I had that base of information to recognize it, because I wouldn't have recognized it if, I hadn't kind of had that little bit of information. But the further I dug into it and started to, figure out the origins and all these types of things, it's really crazy, what they were trying to do to the world, truly. And it was just shocking to me. So I want to ask you this. This was my question. Why do you think that something like critical race theory, or critical theory that covered, let's just say that because it covers all of them, why do you think something like that was able to come into America that is so antithetical to that idea? That's what blew my mind.
Well, one book that I'd recommend if you want to understand the roots, I think, of what's happened in America is reading the book Rules for Radicals,
Mhm.
which was created by Saul Alinsky, who,
Yes.
socialist, anarchist, Marxist,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
wants to destroy Western civilization.
Mhm.
And he has successfully, and people like him have successfully taken over the major cultural institutions in America, from Hollywood to media to academia, because this started in academia in terms of the critical theory, the acceptance of it, and now it's creeping and flowing down to K through 12. So it should be no surprise, because it's the educator class. The educator class, which was
Yeah.
training teachers, was indoctrinating the teachers, the K through
Yep.
12 teachers at the university, and then they graduated, and now they are indoctrinating the young kids. And
Mhm.
and I think what it is playing into, especially seeing it in the church, and I think it's
Yeah.
so destructive in the church, because it's and I'm a practicing Christian, myself.
Mhm.
The church should be, I believe, at the vanguard of separating people from man-made institutions that want to destroy them, and they
Right.
should not be embracing them. And I think that the siren song of it might sound attractive to some people, because it's like, equality, utopia. And also, we can't pretend that life for many Black Americans is easy, because it's not. But we have to
Mhm.
really equip ourselves with the true knowledge of what happened to Black America. And I would
Yeah.
recommend all of your listeners, viewers, look into Jason Riley.
Oh,
He's a Wall Street
yes.
Journal writer, thinker, scholar for the Manhattan Institute.
Yes.
He has an incredible book called Please Stop Helping Us.
I
And
have it. I love it.
it's so good. That should
Yeah.
be required reading. That
Right?
is what should be on the bookshelves instead of the CRT lies.
Yeah.
So what this book shows is, so for example, one thing that CRT talks about is mass incarceration, and
Mhm.
that it's disproportionately affecting Black men.
Yep,
Okay,
right.
well, let's find out why are Black men disproportionately in prison. Well,
Yeah.
the reality is, sadly, that Black men are disproportionately more likely to commit crime, and
Mhm.
sadly be the victims of those crimes as well.
Right.
Um, but why did that crime start? What was
Mhm.
causing that big, spike in crime? And
Yeah.
what he does so brilliantly is he
Mhm.
spells out the timeline of the spike in crime.
Yeah.
So the crime that really just accelerated, it started after the welfare state, and that's what
Yes,
he
it
showed.
did.
So the fact that the Great Society program of LBJ and all these well-intentioned, well-meaning, in many cases Christians, they
Yeah.
said, we're going to take the public purse, we're going to spend trillions of dollars, and we're going to
Mhm.
stamp out poverty permanently.
Right.
And at that time, 75% of Black babies were born into two-parent homes.
That's right.
Yep. And now flash forward, we're 50, 60 years later, $20 trillion spent in this war on poverty.
Yeah.
What's been the fruit? By your fruits you shall know them. It's now the
Okay,
opposite.
Carrie.
Yeah, it's the opposite. It's like 5% of Black babies are born into two-parent homes.
That's
So
right.
just thinking, first of all, LBJ was a white supremacist racist. He loved to
Yes.
use the word. He was exploiting public
Yeah.
money for his own political agenda. He didn't care about
Mhm.
Black people. He hated them. He was just using them for their votes.
Yeah.
But so arguably, one could argue that LBJ was trying to destroy the Black family because he was a white
Oh, for
supremacist,
sure.
and he
Yeah.
got the votes.
Yeah,
So
just like Margaret Sanger. It's it's the same game. It's the same old raggedy game. They just, one guy does it this way, one woman does it this way. It's the same old nasty progressive utopia that we're supposed to think is all good. And I just want to say, for a non-practicing Christian, I appreciate you quoting that Bible, girl. I love that. But you are so right. And all of these things go back to the family. And, a lot of these, and Jason talks about that, the fatherless homes. He talks about, I mean, this comes from Thomas Sowell. I mean, just so many people know this. Even Barack Obama said it. Barack Obama, the crowning prince, Barack Obama. Okay. If let me digress. But it's known, if you don't have a father in the home, you are going to be more vulnerable to crime, more vulnerable to a lack of education, more vulnerable to the bad things that do happen in society. And why is that such? Some people don't like for you to say that. People don't like for you to say, especially, as a Black American, when I talk to other Black Americans, even some of the conservative ones, it's almost like, oh, you can't say that. We have to pretend like fatherless home somehow is not damaging. Like, I don't care what, it's not a color thing. It's just a common sense thing. If you don't have a stable home, and we've known this pretty much forever, but all of a sudden now you can't say that, Carrie. Why not?
Well, because we see that this censorship is happening across the board, and I should say, wait, you are a practicing Christian, you are, right?
I am.
Well, I am too. I said I am a practicing Christian, so
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you said you're not a practicing
no,
Christian.
I,
I'm so
I
sorry.
I actually play worship. I play violin at church. So,
Oh
um,
my gosh. Okay, I'm so sorry. I
yeah,
misheard you.
no, no worries. No, I was agnostic for 12 years, actually. In fact, I have a book coming out, a
Ooh.
memoir of my life. I was actually raised in an abusive cult with a Mormon cult. My parents were excommunicated from the Mormon church. They're very extreme. And because of their abuse, I was disowned. Um, for a long time, I was really angry at God because my dad used God's
Mm.
name to hurt us. And so went to college. I was not allowed home because my dad said you're full of Satan and you will corrupt your siblings. And so I wasn't allowed home all through college. And so as a result of that disowning, I became really angry at God because I was like, well, either God is indifferent or he's a hurtful being or just
Mm.
doesn't exist. So yes, I take my faith very seriously, and it
Me
was a
too.
long journey to find God and to let Him back into my heart. So yes, I am very much practicing Christian. I was baptized
Oh my
Christian.
gosh. What an amazing story. I know we're like, this is going, you know
Sorry.
what? This is why I don't like to do just kind of questions already. I have a kind of an idea of what I like to talk about with guests, but I don't like to make it so like we have to stick to this format because we get things like this that come through, which I don't believe in coincidences. So if you don't mind, can we talk about that for a little bit? Because I find that extremely interesting. Because, first of all, welcome to the fam, like welcome home. Like I'm so glad that you made that decision to let God back into your heart. It's it's an amazing, there's nothing like the love of Christ. Just to say that, but I find that the the stronghold that Democrats have over Black Americans in particular is like a cult. And so from you coming from coming from that, do you see what I mean when I say that? Or
Quisha, oh
does
my
that make
goodness.
sense?
Yes, Quisha, yes, absolutely. Like,
Okay.
because there's self-reinforcing beliefs, and there's also the sense of an otherness. For Black
Mhm,
Americans, there's a sense of
mhm,
otherness, and so
mhm.
and with there's a rational reason for that sense of otherness. I mean, we had slavery, we had Jim
Right.
Crow, we had segregation, we had horrible things that were put upon the backs of Black America.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and so to circle the wagons, I actually think a lot about this with Mormonism, because part of why Mormonism was so isolated is because literally Mormons were kicked out of America. The reason they went to Utah is because Utah was not part of America at the time in 1847. They were literally exiled to
Oh.
Mexico. They were kicked out. The church was founded in New York, and they kept being driven west. They went to Ohio, Missouri, Illinois, and finally they were kicked out of America and they went to Utah because it was not part of America. And there was
Oh,
in Missouri, there was what was known as the extermination order. And the order of the governor said that you could kill a Mormon and it was legal.
oh
So,
my God, that's
there
awful.
was a lot of persecution. There was a lot of animosity between Abraham Lincoln and the Mormons, in fact, which is an
Really?
interesting saga in terms of he freed the slaves, but he persecuted my ancestors. And at
Wow.
one point, the federal government was considering shutting down the entire Mormon church and bringing armed forces out to Utah. And the thing is, the Mormons had their own battalion. They had their own armed forces as well. That was part of why they were so people were afraid of them. And so that's part of why they were kicked out.
Mm,
And the doctrines they taught were deemed as very offensive, including polygamy. But being kicked out of the country into the middle of the desert can create this survival mentality that
right.
makes you insular and
Yeah.
shields you from the outside world, for better or for worse. It creates
Yeah.
a sense of belonging for sure, but it also creates alienation and a sense of otherness to people who are not part of who you are. And I have
Mm,
felt that sometimes. I spent a lot of time. I had a company that I started up in Harlem, and spent a lot of time, in Black culture. And
mhm.
there are beautiful characteristics of having that sense of belonging, but at the same
Yeah.
time, if you don't have ways that you celebrate belonging as well as your own unique purpose and your own
Mhm.
unique identity, then it can create this sense of insecurity. And I think
Right.
that's what happens. And so I also personally think, and just disclaimer, Independent Women's Network is not a Christian group. We have people from across the
Mm,
board. I'm just speaking
yeah.
with my personal view here as far as
Right.
my
Right.
but I personally think that the spiritual legacy of Jeremiah Wright is living and breathing today in
Mm,
society, and it's taken over what's happened with Black Lives Matter. So
yeah.
I think spiritually, again, for me, coming to conversion for Christianity, I'm very sensitive of spiritual influences.
Mhm.
Jeremiah Wright was a very powerful spiritual influence on Barack Obama, and he baptized his children. He performed his wedding ceremony. So this is a dude who you can't just dismiss with one speech. And that's what he did. He
Yeah.
threw him under the bus and it was like, nothing more to see here. But if
Right.
you think about who Jeremiah Wright is, he just recently retired. So he was there, for decades. This is
Yeah.
anti-Semitic.
Mhm.
And he's all about goddamn America.
That's right. That's what he
He
said.
says Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter happened. And
Yeah.
so if you look at race relations, so Gallup looks at race relations in America, they've looked at it for decades. They were much better, black, white. So they would poll Black people and they would poll white people.
Yep.
Race relations were so much stronger before Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And I believe that that is the spiritual legacy of Jeremiah Wright. And that's what's happened. The Black Lives Matter ethos is I believe, anti-Christian in the sense that it
Oh,
is
for sure.
rejecting grace, it's rejecting reconciliation,
Yeah.
it rejects, look, I'll just say it, blood sacrifice. 360,000 Union soldiers died to free slaves.
That's
And
right.
anytime I ask a liberal this question, is there any country in the entire history of the world where 360,000 white men have died to free Black
Mhm.
slaves?
Right.
Not any single country that has had that happen. And
Not
it's
a
hell
single
and
one.
horrible that we had slavery, but
Mhm.
it is exceptional. That is an exceptional act of sacrifice that I never hear Black Lives Matter talk about, because then they would, well, you know, and yes, it's true. Horrible things happened after with Jim Crow and everything else. But anyway, I just think that spiritually, the legacy of it's all about, is it MLK or Jeremiah Wright? Which spiritual legacy do you want?
Wow, that is so good. And you know, when you have a leader, and this kind of ties into fathers too, when you have a leader of a home or for a country, and the spirit that that they're embodying, that the ideas that they are that have been instilled into them, and they are, you know, spreading that out over the country or over the home or over a company, it does it trickles down into society. So yeah, like I totally understand exactly what you're saying, because if Barack Obama, because he believed these things, you know, I'm sure Jeremiah Wright was not, that's that, like you said, it was one, that's the speech that we happen to have heard. We don't even know all the other things that he had been preaching in his church for, you know, decades. So who, God only knows what else he was saying. And when Barack Obama, growing up in this and believing these things, and you know, coming into agreement with these things, and now he's presiding over the United States of America, and there you go, you see his kind of like, almost like his spirit that is you know, has been, you know, dwelling over the land. You know, it's, I mean, I don't mean to take it to that deep of a spiritual thing, but I mean, I do believe in those things. I do believe that people have that ability, just like in a home, if when a father is you know, regulating his home and saying, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're about, yeah, everybody's going to be under that idea. So yeah, that's pretty profound. So what made you kind of go back digging into Jeremiah Wright? You know, I know, I mean, we, those of us who can see it, we can see that Barack Obama was certainly he started this whole thing. So did you just kind of say, okay, well, if this started with Barack, then who taught him? Is that kind of how you had
Yeah,
you think about this?
I was living in Manhattan when BLM started,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how the Black community was being devastated by crime, and the idea that we should defund the police and leave these Black communities even more vulnerable, to me seems evil. And again, I know that people have good intentions, but I think we really need to separate intention from outcome. And at the end of the day, the outcome is what's important. Is the person alive, or are they dead? And then also, when you trace you know, Professor Roland Fry up at Harvard,
Right. Yep.
Black economist, he and others have found there is no greater propensity to use lethal force on a Black suspect than a white suspect. In fact, they're slightly less likely to use it on a Black suspect than a white suspect. And they've tried to cancel him for to say that, but it's true. And again,
They
it
took
gets.
away, didn't they take away like his funding for his research?
They did. They tried to do a Me Too on him, but then they brought in an external investigator, and the investigator recommended just for him to go through some sensitivity training, because it was just apparently some, like, you know, I'm not defending his comments, but comments he made towards some female colleagues that he should not have made. But it was not, you know, serious assault, you know, assault or allegations of that nature. And so the punishment did not fit the crime, but the crime.
It's so funny how they say that they, you know, all for Black lives, but here's this Black man who's saying, actually, you know, look at the research, this is what it is, and they try to cancel him. It's so funny how they do that. I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, no, girl, it's your show. No, but so yeah, I saw this unfolding, and I was really trying to trace what was happening in this country. Like, how did we get here with Black fatherlessness and crime and violence? And, you know, as part of my abusive cult upbringing, we moved all the time. I went to 17 public schools and homeschool, and 2 of those public schools were inner city schools. They were in Kansas City. Oh, hey, Kitty. And so why not? And so I was one of the only white children at these two schools, these two
Mm.
schools, and I was picked on for being white. I had Black friends who were picked on for being friends with the Black girl or with the white girl.
Mhm.
And that was my first taste of the need for school choice, because
Mm.
schools were just horrible. And so I
Yeah.
guess that kind of planted the seed of just really understanding, again, outcome versus intention, and
Yeah.
just the stranglehold that the left and Democrats have on inner cities, on Black
Mhm.
America. I just really wanted to trace the genesis of it all.
Yeah.
And during this period also, I was going through my conversion process. So I've been very sensitive to understanding, again, spiritual influences and what's happening. And so the more I read about, because this all BLM started under Barack Obama,
Right.
and just tracing, I don't know how I watched it, but there's this movie about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's first date. Forget the name of
Yeah.
it. But if you remember that movie that they watched on their first date, it was a Spike Lee movie called Do the Right Thing.
Yes.
And that movie, I have not seen it, but I've read it, and I don't really want to see it because it's basically Jeremiah Wright in terms of like goddamn America. It's a story about a pizzeria in New York City, I think in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
and it just devolves into violence and race riots between Italians and Black people, and
Mm.
dystopian and violent, and and that is the ethos of what Black Lives Matter brings to the inner city. It is not a
Yeah.
spirit of reconciliation. It's not a
Right.
spirit of forgiveness. The fact that Michelle Obama said, for the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country. I just, that is so fundamentally disheartening and so inaccurate in terms of
Ungrateful. It's ungrateful.
it's
It is
so
un
narrow-minded. It's so narrow-minded. And this is a woman who had an incredible life. And let's not forget, she had an incredible father in the home.
Yes.
That's not an accident of why she had this incredible, blessed life. And that the American people had done incredible things, in the wake of 9/11 to stand up and come together. She's not proud of that in her adult life. She's not
She's
proud of
not proud of of slavery being ended in America. Well, she said in her life, so
that in her
maybe she's
adult
just
life.
talking about in
She
her
said,
life.
she said the first time in my adult life. It's like,
Yeah.
how many incredible things have happened in this country in her adult life? And
Right.
that's the only thing, because she's that self-absorbed and narcissistic,
Yeah.
narrow-minded, wedge issue woman who
Mm.
doesn't understand grace, reconciliation. But it was a very telling moment.
Yeah.
And I think that her and Barack and the influence, how could you go to church every Sunday and hear this preacher telling you that America is evil? How could you go there and then expect to be a reconciling force for your country after
Right.
you use that church to launch your political career? And,
Yeah.
and what I think is so interesting is that people are freaking out about, they say Christian nationalism, Trump, and white evangelicals, like they're all like, and,
Mhm.
and yeah, look, we need to separate our politics from our faith. I agree with that in the terms
Yeah.
of, like, this is a secular constitution, but it is for a moral and a people who honor
Mhm.
God,
Yeah.
and so I'm all for, Martin Luther King invoked God. Like, the
Mhm.
civil rights movement was a Christian movement. So
That's
when I
right.
hear these secular liberals who are freaking out about
Mm.
Christian conservatives, it's like, Christian theology was the
Yeah.
motivator to abolish slavery,
That's right.
to abolish Jim Crow. That's what it was. And so you can't deny Christianity as a positive force. And so it's so hypocritical. Again, they ignore the Black liberation theology of Jeremiah
Mhm.
Wright, who is very, again, anti-Semitic, which
Yeah.
is no coincidence why the BLM and the Women's March leaders are anti-Semitic. It's all
Yeah.
coming from the same songbook.
Yeah. You're so right. And I believe, I can't remember where I read this, but Jeremiah Wright was against school choice too. And along with Barack Obama. And there's this, what, I can't remember where I read it, but he was trying, there was a woman who was in the church who was trying to get her son into a better school from the Chicago school that he was in, and Barack, and according to what I read, they and Jeremiah Wright told that mother, no, just keep him there. I find it so funny that these people who say America's so awful and America is just terrible would want to keep kids in the same government schools. Like, okay, so if America's terrible, that means the government is terrible. Why would you want to keep kids pigeonholed into this system, this government system, public school, where clearly they're not getting what they need? So it makes me feel like they are woefully ignorant or completely hypocritical, and knowing what they're pushing is evil. Because why would you want to keep kids, take away that choice from parents to do what is best for their family, considering that America is just so terrible according to them? Why would they want to do that? It makes no sense to me.
Well, it comes down to money and power. That's what it is. The teachers' unions give them money, and the teachers' unions want power. So anytime you allow a child to escape from their clutches into a school that's not a union school, that's money and power that is diminishing their influence and power. And so that's really what it comes down to. It's not about the child, it's about the adults.
Yeah.
And, I don't know Jeremiah Wright's position on school choice, but I do know Joe Biden's position and what they've done, and Bill de Blasio. I think the current mayor is maybe a little less antagonistic, but the fact that you have hundreds of thousands, I think the last time I checked that there was like 1 million names on school choice waiting lists, is a signal. This is a huge signal that what's happening is not working. And the fact that so many now, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal, they said 470,000 students have left the LA public schools. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
If I'm reading it right. Like, I think, I mean, that's enormous. I mean, that's a huge, or was it 47,000? I need to double check that. But
yeah, no, there are people are leaving in droves. Homeschool is on the rise. School choice, the push for school choice is on the rise. We just had that big bill in Arizona for school choice go through. I am a huge fan of school choice. I don't know, back in October when we were called domestic terrorists, I was like, okay, I'm done. We need a mass exodus from the public school system. We need more school choice. We need more school choice. We need to give parents the opportunity to choose what is best for them and their children. And I don't think some government bureaucrat should have the right, or teachers union or whomever should have the right to come in between that. It's like, why would you want, if this is not working for my child, why would you want me to stay there if you truly cared about, people as they so claim that they do? Nothing that they say makes sense, Carrie. They all, oh, we love kids and kids deserve a good education. Okay, well, this school isn't working for me. I want to move my child out. No, you can't do that. It's just like nothing that they say makes sense. It's just ridiculous at this point. Give the parents the option to choose. Even I hate that we have conservatives who will say that they are for, really, it's been a policy issue of the Republican Party for years, but we haven't seen it being pushed like it is. I mean, I'm grateful that it is being pushed today. Trust me, I am. But, there are some that still are like, well, I'm not really sure. They kind of, why do you think that is? Why do you think there are some people, even on the right, who are still kind of like not really sure about school choice?
I mean, yeah, because they do get blowback, to have teachers coming after you in the media. I could see why they might feel like, oh, I don't want to upset the teachers. That's not a good look, maybe from their perspective. But again, it should really go down to students. The money should follow the student.
Yeah.
It should not follow the school or the adult teacher. It should follow the student. That's what we should really be narrowly focused on, because that's whose future is at stake.
Yeah.
And that's who is vulnerable here. And I think the idea of school choice is something that even some Democrats have come on board. But I think what's happening now in that Arizona bill that you mentioned, and Florida has been great where you are, that I think COVID has awakened a lot of understanding about just how horrible these
Right.
public schools are. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is the desire, maybe for some Republicans also, to reform the existing public schools too, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just stopping how
Yeah.
terrible they are. If you're in an emergency room situation, you got to stop the bleeding.
Right.
The bleeding is happening in the classrooms, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think it's great to see so many governors pushing back against CRT. And
Yeah.
Governor Stitt in Oklahoma, he's just put an investigation out to the Tulsa school district about investigating everything from their shutdown. And then this school district got millions of dollars in COVID money and yet still remained shut down for hundreds of days. I think it was the longest shutdown, in the whole state. And then putting in CRT. So he's going on offense. So it's great. And he's the president
Good.
of the Republican Governors Association. And so I know that that's something top of mind for him. I've interviewed him. I'm going to see him later this month at the Steamboat Institute in Colorado. But yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about just this inflation bill that just passed, Mitch McConnell got played like a fiddle.
Yeah.
He agreed to pass this microchips bill, which I thought was a bad bill to begin with, in order to stop this inflation bill. In the end, he didn't stop it, and he still pushed, hundreds of millions on this microchip bill as well. So it's like we had $1 trillion in spending agreed to in 1 week, in part because of the Republican leader. And I think what's sad, and I think that's, seeing conservative candidates who are sometimes, intemperate. They say things that I disagree with. They get too extreme. They need to read the Bible, where it's like, where it's like, God wants you to consider your thoughts and to have justice, mercy, self-control,
Yes.
to bring that into your language. But how do you reconcile that with these Republicans who don't actually govern by their principles? And I think that's going to be the tension moving forward. How do we have high, strong, quality candidates, but who will also fight? And I think that's part of why Donald Trump won, was because even though his tweets were just over the top sometimes,
Yeah.
but he wasn't afraid to fight.
He wasn't afraid to fight.
That's what's missing, I think, with a lot of the Republicans. It's like the left has no qualms about being deeply unethical and lying and using the press to smear and create falsehoods.
Yeah.
And we can't get down to that level, but at the same time, we can't be afraid to fight.
I am so glad you said that. Being here in Florida, that is one of the main things that I hear. I work with the governor's office from time to time, and Governor Ron DeSantis is a fighter, and Casey is his, the first lady. She ain't far behind. Like they are, they're not having it. And so many people love that they are standing up for we the people, because for so long we felt so unheard. And now we have a governor who is like, no, we're not doing that. Matter of fact, when it came to Disney, we're coming after your, what all of these benefits that you've been getting. You're not going to use your power. You're over in California, and you're trying to use your power to have political influence in Florida. No, we're not doing that. And just like among all of the others, shutting down critical race theory, as best as he can, and giving parents, some legal authority there to take action if necessary. And this is what I tell Republicans, conservatives all the time. The reason why we are always on the defense is because we're not being strong leaders. You're like, people want to get behind somebody who they feel confident that's going to stand up for them, like a Donald Trump, like Carrie, who just won it, which is like, I mean, I am so excited. That to me, that kind of tests the water, to see where we're going as a country. And even Governor DeSantis, there were a lot of Black moms who voted for him simply because of school choice.
Mm-hmm.
They voted. I mean, it has been said over 100,000 Black American moms, Black Florida moms, who said, this guy, he's for school choice. My children are utilizing that. That's the guy we're going with. And he beat his opponent by 30,000 votes because of that mom-led school choice advocacy. And so that, I mean, standing up for what you believe in is exactly what we have to do. And I just realized our time, Carrie. I have a call coming up that I have to jump on. Oh my gosh, I'm just so wrapped up in this that I'm not even paying attention to the time. So why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, and we'll make sure to place all of your links in the description box below.
Sure. Yeah. So Independent Women's Forum is IWF.org. And I'm on social media just at Carrie Sheffield on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, Sheffield Carrie. And yeah, would love to communicate with people. I have a Substack. It's just carriesheffield.substack.com. I do monthly updates on there. And yeah, would love to just keep fighting. I live in Virginia, and we have a great governor too, Governor Youngkin, and he's a fighter for school choice. And he's kind of he's sort of like a DeSantis light in terms of his style is a bit more genteel, I would say, but his policy is similar. He wants to have common sense conservative ideas. And so I'm proud to live here in Virginia too.
Absolutely. Great to hear. Thank you so much for coming on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Carrie Sheffield. We have to do this another time, Carrie. And I'm sorry to cut it so short, so abruptly, but thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.